Hi there, and welcome to Leadershipisation, All Things Leadership. My name is Beth Bergen. I'm a global leadership and communication coach. My goal is to build influential leaders, and I work with executives, with business owners, with managers, and often I have the pleasure of also working with their teams to develop this influence in their leadership and in their communication. I am here most every Tuesday live at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Look, I've had lots of comments, lots of feedback from people about the recent topic that I did around building rapid rapport, both with new or existing teams. Now, if you missed that, there was actually a set of 5 questions that that I shared with people that are awesome to build that rapid rapport, both, as I said, with your new or with your existing team. So if you haven't had those 5, reach out and I'll send you the link so that you can actually watch the session and make a note of what those 5 questions are. The key is that actually, as a leader, questions are an absolutely great tool for you. Now, if we go back to real basics with questions, there are 2 main types of questions. There's closed questions and there's open questions. Closed questions are those that give you a simple yes or no. So it really limits, when you ask a closed question, it really limits the kind of response that you're going to get from someone. And this can be really great. They can be useful if you want specifics or particular facts from whoever you're asking the questions of. And these kinds of questions often start with did you, do you, will you, have you, are you? Like, are you happy? Do you want to go to this movie? Have you purchased those yet? So those kinds of questions where you're gathering specific information or facts and you're limiting the response to a simple yes or no, they're closed questions. As I said, they have their place, but not necessarily in terms of getting the kind of information that you might want. So open questions, on the other hand, they invite a longer, more detailed response. They encourage people to actually be sharing their perspective. They encourage depth. They encourage detail. They encourage providing in-depth information. And most of these would start with something like this. How? How are you going to do that? What exactly are we doing today? Describe to me the approach that you're going to take here. So these are completely different from closed questions in that you cannot easily answer yes or no. You're getting that in-depth response that I was talking about. That's what you're looking for. You can ask an open question that begins with why. However, a caution around using why at the beginning of or why as a question. Why did you do that? Why were you thinking that would make sense? Those kinds of things. What you've got to be careful of is that it can make the listener, the person you're wanting to get the information from, they can become really defensive. So try and avoid why if you can. It's more useful to say something like, help me understand what it was that triggered that response, or help me understand who might have, or ask an open question differently. So some examples of open questions are things like this: what do you think? Tell me about. How do you whatever it is, what would you do in this situation? And instead of why, another great way of saying why can be for what purpose? For what purpose was that approach taken? Now, remember with open, they can be much more influential in the questions that you ask. When you ask a well thought out open question, then you can be much more influential in terms of getting to the root cause or getting the detail and the information that you want. Now, just remember that in a sales process, what we're trying to do is get as many yeses as we possibly can. So closed questions can be great being used in a sales process. So think about the great leadership intelligence tool. A great leadership tool is instead of making statements all the time as a leader, think about asking questions. Now, you might ask, interesting, what is behind that statement? You would notice there I was trying really hard to avoid saying why. What's behind that statement? Well, questions help decide about, they help us to decide about a person's ability to answer something. So when we ask questions, the person then has the opportunity to answer quite confidently to support whatever idea they're promoting. And also when we ask really good questions, we're giving ourselves and others the opportunity to really plug into something that we might have missed that's worth checking out. It gives us that detail. It helps to fill our own knowledge gaps. So that's why those questions are better. If someone is coming to you with an idea for a project, for a team, for an approach to something, asking those questions will help them to identify where their passion is about a particular project, where their knowledge base is, and between the two of you, you'll identify where there are knowledge gaps. Like, just think about this. FBI negotiators, they ask lots and lots of questions. Why? Because they're filling in the gaps in the information that they've got. And once we get people talking, we're able to probe, we're able to discover, we can empower people, and we can guide them towards a different way of thinking because we understand what their thinking is. Now, I know that I used the reference to FBI negotiators just earlier. The key thing with both the FBI negotiators and your questioning in your leadership role is that this isn't about any kind of interrogation. This is about encouraging trust and building that rapport, because what you're doing is you're helping people. You're helping them by challenging assumptions. You're not challenging them and putting them down. Yeah, so there's a different use of the word challenging there. You're helping them, not giving them a hard time, and you're allowing others to absolutely feel heard. Like probing questions encourage that critical thinking. Probing questions are the kinds of questions that help people to explore those ideas and to challenge the assumptions that they might have. And that's sometimes, this is a conversation for another time, this is sometimes called a Socratic method of questioning, where what you're doing is you're asking an open-ended question. Then what you do is pause, because what you're doing is allowing the other person the space to respond to you. And then you listen to that response and build on that response and ask some further questions. And then what you do is you summarize so that we've all reached that same point. Yeah. So those probing questions are going to encourage, as I said, that critical thinking. So in your role as a leader, when you're asking questions, your purpose has got to be paramount. And there are generally four reasons that we would ask questions. The first one is to challenge those assumptions, as I said before, to hold up particular ideas, to explore other angles. And that's really important because you're encouraging and empowering your staff when you do that. You're teaching them the skill of looking at things from a different perspective. The second thing is to clarify. You ask questions to clarify. Now, maybe you're clarifying for yourself. Maybe you're also clarifying for other people who are in the room, who are there with you, so that you can make sure that everyone is on the same page. That's what's really important in the team. We're coming towards making a decision. We want to be able to do that with having people closer on the same page. The third reason that you would ask questions is to provide guidance, to guide, to help people to reframe and to think differently about an issue, and also to help people to learn from the mistakes that they may have made in the past, or to learn, there's so much to learn about the way that we may have done things previously. Sometimes there are awesome things to learn and sometimes not so awesome things to learn. But if we're learning from our mistakes, it means that we're not necessarily out there repeating them. And the final and fourth reason that a leader would be asking questions is to provide support. To provide support. What often feels easier to us is to ask a series of easy questions. If what you're doing is asking some tough questions, then what you're actually going to be doing is you're actually shifting towards a whole lot more building their resilience. You're building confidence and your team's ability to make some of these decisions and think them through for themselves. And that's what we should be about as a leader. We should be about empowering our team to absolutely be the best that we can be. So, as the leader, it's important that you come back and you check yourself. Reflect on how you're doing and make sure that your questioning is about authentic curiosity, that it's not this fake curiosity. It's not you pretending to be interested when actually you're not. So it's that authentic curiosity that's important, because when they see that authenticity and they understand that it's real, they know that you're about building relationships, that you're about building that trust, and it's not about disciplining or punishment. That's not why you're asking the questions. So I come back to what I said earlier. It's not an interrogation. This is you wanting to work out exactly where you are, and get that clarity, get that certainty that people are on the same page. Now, there's a really great book, and I'm just looking to find it. Here it is right here. There's a really great book that can be, that I believe is an awesome resource for you as a leader. And it's this book here. You might not be able to see it. It's called The Coaching Habit. And he's actually an Australian guy, a guy called Michael Bungay Stanier. It's called The Coaching Habit. And what I love about this, it's all about saying less and ask more and change the way you lead forever is the subtitle on the book. Michael's he's well known and well regarded in coaching circles, and I think he does quite a lot of keynote speaking. But this book is based on 7 questions, and he talks about how these questions are really, really effective, whether they're typed or whether they're spoken. So he has the 7 questions. And what I love about the book is that it goes through each of those questions and questions that might fall off them, in terms of you guiding a coaching kind of conversation with someone in your team. And that coaching conversation is all about you empowering your team members so that they can be the best that they can be. So the first one of those questions is, what's on your mind? And this is all about kickstarting the conversation. Someone comes to see you, what's on your mind? The second question, and this is a great coaching question, and what else? So that's often in coaching, that's often called the or question, and what else? Because that opens the door for more. And often you'll get closer to the truth because you have asked, and what else, and what else? The third question that Michael suggests is, what's the real challenge here for you? Which is the same as saying, what's the problem here for you? And this brings a focus, because when someone comes to talk to you initially, they can be all over the place. They can have, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. So this brings it down to focus. The fourth question is, what do you want? And this is really gets down to the foundation of what's happening, because there's a difference between what we need and what we want. And it helps to kind of, really drill down onto that. The key here for you is to actually listen. To listen so that you understand what it is that they want. And if necessary, you can provide some guidance and ask some questions that bring them back on to what, where their focus is, so that they don't go down another rabbit hole. The fifth question is, how can I help? How can I help? Now, it's a direct request. It's a direct request. You don't necessarily know best. You don't necessarily know best, but it's helping them to identify that you're not always the person who's going to run in and solve it. It gives you a clear idea about where they see themselves as being. Are they capable of managing it themselves, or are they expecting to turn it over to you? So you don't want them to see that you're not interested, but neither do you want them to see that you're taking over. So by asking that question, you're going to get a key idea about that. Question 6 is, if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? So this is kind of a strategic question. It's a curious question. It gets people thinking, oh, okay. Oh, what else? Oh, what might I not be doing that I need to be doing? And if I bring this idea in, what difference will it make ultimately? So just create some of that strategic thinking so that people aren't jumping from one idea to the next. And finally, what was most useful to you? And this is all about your learning. And you can, what was your key insight from this conversation? Or, what you're doing is helping with that learning, so that all the time you're building through your questions the confidence and the competence of your team members. And that's why you're there. You're leading and helping them to be the best version of themselves, helping them to expand and grow in the job that they're doing. So we've talked a lot today about different kinds of questions. What might your actions be from here moving forward? Well, the biggest suggestion, or the best suggestion I can make to you, is that you start by thinking, Where can I access and can I be building a bank of open questions myself? Open questions that create that deeper thinking as a real resource that for you, that are powerful, that create a sense of reflection, because that reflection will cause growth and some self-awareness in our team. One of the questions that I love that does this, and it really, there are so many different layers to it, is this one. What could you do today to make tomorrow the way you want it to be? What could you do today to make tomorrow the way you want it to be? So, questions absolutely are the answer. And we come back to that leadership intelligence tool that we've talked about an awful lot, and that is being curious. So that curiosity is going to be driven by open questions. Thank you so much. If you've got any questions and comments, please pop them in the platform that you're watching this on, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you watching the replay, hashtag replay would be wonderful so that we know that you're there and supporting us. If you need help building a question bank, reach out, because I have both small group and individual coaching options that I know would benefit you. Bye now.